All right, this is part 3, my family's journey from, let's see, autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, and cancer. This is part 3 where I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we did to begin the journey toward healing. I was on methotrexate and Enbrel for, gosh, I've lost track of time. I think it was like 7 years. I hated taking it because it suppresses your immune system. So maybe my joints were no longer achy, but it's like, well, what about all this other stuff? Because if you have a compromised immune system, then you can't fight cancer and all that. Okay, let's see. So what do we do for healing? But actually, before I get there, just know that when you look at live blood under a microscope, many times for people who are loaded with mold and chemicals and, if you have any of these autoimmune disorders and cancer and all that, most likely when you look at your blood under a microscope, your red blood cells are going to be they're going to be stuck together. Okay, some people it's going to be worse than others. Sometimes it's mild rouleau. That was my daughter. For me, I had a little bit worse, and then my husband, when we put his blood under the microscope, his red blood cells were so stuck together that it all actually looked like a worm. It made me jump. I'm like, what are we looking at? Because I was, used to seeing the red blood cells sort of float all around, and his were all stuck. That's called rouleau. And when you're in a state of rouleau or a certain degree of it, your body is not using the water, using the oxygen, and it can't move the toxins. Okay, it cannot move the toxins. And so eventually this, you're sort of stewing in mold and chemicals, and it's going to manifest itself in some kind of disorder or a disease. So for my husband, it was prostate cancer. For me, it was rheumatoid arthritis. And like I said, my daughter didn't have the rouleau as bad, but she was so loaded with mold. And I don't think I explained that either in the other video. When the mold can destroy the blood-brain barrier. So when the mold hits the brain, it throws like almost everything into a disordered state. And I'm not going to try to pretend to be a doctor or even just know it has this trickle-down effect. So one of the first things it does, though, is it lowers your serotonin. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to that serotonin thing. So after the live blood analysis, we know my daughter has Lyme. So we find a Lyme literate doctor. He happens to be down in Florida. And he looks at my daughter in a very holistic way. And I already told you that in video number 2, what he was looking for. And so we begin 5-day-a-week detoxing therapy, which is basically glutathione and ALA. Reluctantly, we had to use antibiotics, and all of this is so bad because to use antibiotics, that destroys your gut lining even more. So we're already, doing the detox and pulling chemicals out, mold out, and so the gut lining, basically your intestines, are just kind of like destroyed in the meantime. But you have to get the bad stuff out of your body. If you're one of these people who can't detox properly from this, and it's millions of you out there. So it was so intense. We thought she would be there 6 to 8 weeks. We ended up being there for 1 year. We did not get back until June 2018. We went down there June 2017. We came back June 2018. She was a lot better, but she was not healed. We left because couldn't afford that anymore, and it was just time to get out. She was doing a lot better, but she still wasn't healed. So it was quite interesting because I find it quite interesting. It was in March 2018, so we were still at the clinic. It was about 2 a.m. one morning, and I woke up. I felt like I had been awakened, and I knew I was supposed to pray. So I'm praying for my daughter, praying that God would heal her. and I was praying for the doctor that God would help him and help speed up the healing. There were far too many patients sitting there in chairs for months on end. And I'm, seeing too many people leave, and they were leaving because they were out of money. They weren't leaving because they were healed. And it was just very sad. And I'm not blaming the doctor. I'm not. That was my prayer. Just speed this up, God. I just found it to be incredible and so hard. And I was mad, and God knew my heart. I was praying for a lot of the patients who had been sitting there. I could see their faces, and I was weeping, and I'm angry, and it's not the way it's supposed to be. And I rolled over and I fell back to sleep. But the main prayer was, God, speed this up. Speed up the healing. The next morning, somewhere around 10 o'clock, a good friend of mine calls from Virginia. And she said, Terry, I've met somebody who is a nutritional biochemist. And he's been in this arena for decades. And she said, he has something that I think can speed up your daughter's healing. And I'm like, what? Because that was specifically my prayer. And so she tries to explain it to me, and I have no clue what she's saying, but then she offers to do a 3-way phone call with this man. And so about an hour later, I'm on this 3-way conversation with this man named Bill Downs. And he's explaining to me, I have enough time, I think I can get this in. So he's explaining to me that what the doctor's doing is good, but he compared it to swatting flies. So he said, think of your body and your blood as like the swamp, okay? And somehow pond. Let's just think of it first as a very clean pond. Your nice healthy body and all the blood. And he said, think of it as a clean pond. But if for whatever reason things get messed up and it turns into a swamp, well, that swamp's going to be producing, the mosquitoes are going to be flying off the swamp, the horseflies, and all the little critters inside and flying around it. And you can swat flies all day long. He said, because all these critters, the parasites, the mold, cancer, the tick infection, Babesia, Bartonella, all these things require, also the herpes virus and Epstein-Barr, all these things require an anaerobic environment. That's where they thrive. And so if somebody's in the state of rouleau, like my husband was and like I was, these critters just thrive. Cancer cannot survive in an aerobic environment. Neither can all those other things. So he said, wouldn't it be better to restore the body's ability to use water, use oxygen, and eliminate the waste? And I said, well, that makes sense to me. And then he goes on to explain how after somebody has taken the liquid nutrition, which the engineer, and actually that was the other amazing part, the engineer who, I guess you'd say, invented the protosomal technology, and there's a video I'm going to share too that will explain all this, the protosomal technology, he actually lives in the town that I was in Florida. So you talk about a confirmation. So I get awakened. I'm praying that God would make a way to speed this up. And I get a call, whatever that is, 8 hours later. So yes, it can speed things up. And by the way, the engineer who, it's just amazing, who invented the protosomal technology lives in the same town that I'm in for, at that point, I guess it was about 9 months, 10 months. Okay, so that is so elementary. So here's the deal is, our bodies are starving for the proper nutrition. Our food's not doing it. The soil that you look at all these fields all over America, they're depleted now of nutrients. The food you're getting at the store, all this junk food that people consume, all the fast food and all this, it's almost barren of the nutrients and the enzymes. So our God-given bodies are starving for the proper nutrition. And then when you combine it with the bad things like breathing in mold for 4 years, like I did, and then all the chemicals, then when you combine it that some people just genetically can't detox all those things as well as other people, we're a sick society. And so he has all the scientific proof, and it's in a couple different videos that I'm going to share. He has a company called Victory Nutrition International, and all I can tell you is I started taking, it was 2 ounces a day, and I did that for about 1 year. Now I've increased it even more. But and the reason I know this is working, and it's kept me off methotrexate and Enbrel. I was so done with these big pharma drugs. It's designed, I mean, all of you people out there who are on methotrexate or Enbrel, it's designed where you're taking that the rest of your life. And maybe you're happy with that. I'm not, okay? Not at all. So, but I've not had it for 1 year. What I was going to tell you is on the chemical test, the last item on that test looks at how well your mitochondria in your cells are functioning. I think it's called the triglycine. And you want to be as close to 0 as possible. If you're under 1, that's pretty good. If you're above 1, not too good. So the first time I did that test, I was at 2.98, not good. So my mitochondria, they're gummed up. They're gummed up with pesticides. They're gummed up with all these other chemicals. I mean, I think it's 16 chemicals. I was in the 75th percent or higher bracket in probably 8 or 9 of the chemicals. And then, what was the other thing? A good friend of mine has a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, blood disease. So I begged him for 4 months to go get the Great Plains laboratory test done. That would test him for mold and test him for chemicals. And then I begged him to get the live blood analysis done. Identical thing. He has Rouleau so badly, and he came in on that triglycine, that mitochondria function level. He came in at 8.9. I call that bullseye or bingo. That's why he had cancer. Then I tell another friend about this. Okay, so I didn't get to the good news. After 1 year of being on just 2 ounces a day of all this is nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and a whole list of these phytonutrients, and the way it's packaged with these protosomal technology, you hold it in your mouth for like 2 minutes, and it goes immediately into the cells, okay? And I've observed this on a microscope, okay? After 1 year, my triglycine number had gone all the way down to 0.52. 0.52. That's excellent. That's the only thing. Well, 2 things had changed. I had stopped taking methotrexate and Enbrel, and then I started with the intracellular nutrition. Okay, let's see. There's another person with a rare blood disease. This is another man, and I forget the name of the disease, but it's a disease that the way the doctors deal with it is they suppress your red blood cell production. Think about that. So I asked him, were you ever tested for mold and chemicals? He said no. I said, have you ever had your blood looked at under a microscope? Nope. So he went down and got all this done, and he was off the charts. This is a man who had a spleen removed because they didn't know what else to do, but not one doctor had him tested for mold and chemicals. That answers the why. So anyway, he started on this 2 ounces a day, and the nutrition, it's not healing diseases. All it's doing is returning your body to a state where you can use the water, use the oxygen, and begin getting the garbage out of your body. So I just want to make this big disclaimer. This is not about some product that, heals diseases and all that. No. It just restores the, God's way of taking, of our body's ability to remove the bad stuff, use the water and the oxygen. All right, I'll be making video number 4 coming right up.